Well, I thought it was going to be a quick break.
It was definitely not. It was actually a very slow and belabored break that felt like the apocalypse had arrived.
And that was before the fires.
And that was before the fires. And then
your home was remarkably close to wildfires.
Yeah, it was like 4 blocks from the evacuation zone. And I was like, let's not risk it.
Yeah, let's not risk being here. If we have the means, let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here if we have the means. But it was really crazy because we landed in LA on Monday night. Okay.
Yeah.
I get in my car and I'm driving to work and I'm waiting at a stoplight and the wind is so strong. My Mazda is lifting up from one side.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, this is insane. Mind you, one of the writers in the writer's room wrote in the group chat like, hey guys, I don't know if we should go into the office. There's going to be a windstorm tomorrow. And I spent hours just shitting on him because I was like, what type of idiot West Coast psychopath cancels work because of wind? Well, yeah. I was wrong because we were in the office and it was like scary. Like things just started happening because in contrast to like snowstorms and hurricanes where you have days sort of to psychologically prep, it just happened all of a sudden. And I had to drive home and like the stoplights weren't working. Streets were closed. I drive home. I'm like almost home and I see this plume of smoke. Plume, excuse me, plume of smoke. And I'm like, what is happening? And when I get home, I start finding out everything that like we were all finding out in real time.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I saw headlines or made a note of it until maybe like Wednesday. But so I imagine like for you guys, the day it's like all happening, you have to wait until like the next day before you get the full scale of what is happening.
But it felt like something was definitely off and weird and scary. And then the next morning we wake up and it looked like there was fog and haze and like a gray cloud above us. For a brief moment, like in the morning, I was just like, wait, what is this? Like, is it just an ugly day? And it was just smoke. We were covered in smoke and we had to leave. And it's just been like kind of insane to see a city that I love to shit on go through something so traumatic. And
yeah, this is like your first reckoning with whether you actually love this place or not.
I do feel love for it. I like my heart really hurts for it. Like, and all these people that have lost literally everything and you see community. And I know that, everyone's taking the opportunity to make this political and make it a vehicle for their political opinions when in fact it's by and large, it's just a tragedy where a lot of the community has stepped up and helped each other. And I think that's sort of the most wonderful thing that's come out of this. There is a sense of community here. No one's been nicer to me in this city than the last week.
Right. Because it rattles the chains, right? Like suddenly you all are like at attention of understanding that we exist in a space that we share with other people. And those of us that weren't impacted as negatively as others were have like a responsibility to show up.
Exactly. Like my neighbors, 0 out of 10. Like they don't say hi in the elevator.
Yeah.
They're in the gym. They don't even look at me. Now, nicest people I've ever met. Like, yeah. And it does rattle the chains because you're like, wow, I'm so lucky. I still have a home. And so quickly that can change. So I should count my blessings. It's funny how human beings just like forget,
all the time. But, you constantly forget how like quickly something can just be yanked out from under you.
Immediately.
There is a feeling of security that like, because it's consistent for me right now, it's always going to be there. And then like hardest moments in life are when that gets proven false.
Exactly. So, I think collectively millions of people here are feeling that. Everyone in LA has someone affected directly. Yeah. I think, whether it be a friend, an employer, an employee, a coworker, it's just everyone is affected by this. So you gotta get up and
tug on your bootstraps and get back to podcasting.
It's so important that we podcast.
Kris and Joanna are close friends with nothing in common. To start a weekly conversation, they ask, "Can I have a word?"
There are a lot of places to donate.
We will make sure that there are some links in our YouTube description as well as in the description of the episode if you are listening to it.
Yeah, I love that we both sound sick.
We are sick. Let's say, all right, great. We talked about the real problem in the world. Now let's talk about our problems. We both congested.
I've been congested for 2 weeks. I don't know what breathing is anymore.
You had smoke compromise your airways, and then also your own body saying, no, no, no.
No, don't let anything in here, actually.
Don't suck in any of that very good oxygen.
But are you feeling a little better?
I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm always going to feel a little sick. I'm going to be sick until this child develops enough immunity to not make it my fucking problem.
You know what? You should bring this up to her when she's an adult.
No, I'll bring it up to her now. We're going to have a quarterly meeting. It's going to be a review about how it is that she is doing in this this occupation known as becoming a human. And I'm going to let her know that there are some high points and some low points.
You know, I hate to say it, but I don't know that she's doing such a good job of not letting her journey affect others negatively.
Yeah, I would say she is unaware of the size of her wake.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful way of putting it.
But I'm going to tamp her down. And I'm going to let her know that she can't be too big for her britches. This is Can I Have a Word? We've given you no hint that is what the show is about yet.
No, literally nothing at all.
Nothing. But it's a new year. It's a new run of episodes for us. It's a simple concept. We are going to take a random word from a random word generator and talk about it until we're bored, we're out, we're deplenished, till you're bored, depressed.
I mean, maybe we start out depressed so there's no down point.
Maybe there can be something uplifting about what your time with us will give you.
We don't make any promises, though.
I mean, I can tell you that it's going to perk up a little bit. The word is weed.
The word is weed? Are you kidding me right now?
The word is weed.
The word is weed. Thank God.
Thank you.
Thank God it's
weed. Thank you so much.
Can you imagine if it was devastation? I'd be like, get out of here.
If it was disaster, irresponsibility, inevitability.
I'd be like, get out. Get out. I give up.
This was just weed.
Wow. Well, weed. What a beautiful thing.
I want to first acknowledge right now.
Uh-huh.
It's so nice to be doing this episode in the year of our Lord 2025, where we can just talk about what all we're doing with weed.
Yeah, openly.
No stigma.
Zero.
At this point.
I mean, it's interesting because I would say that my parents' generation that are older from Latin America, I think it's still very
frowned upon.
Yeah. Especially my in-laws are Colombian and they look down on it like a lot. And it's because drug trade, ravaged their country. And I guess they just don't even, they don't even consider, the differences between any of them.
Right. It's like, yes, one particular drug devastated, but now they're all lumped in as bad guys.
It's like when my brother broke up with his longtime girlfriend and then her family hated me. I'm like, I didn't do anything. How dare you not talk to me at this wedding? Like, I didn't break up with your daughter.
I have nothing to do with this.
Literally nothing. I like her. Anyway, so it's kind of like that. But it's remarkable that in our generation, we've seen weed go from villain to a buddy.
Literally to the booming economic item of the hour.
Well, it is a booming economic item. I think that's a good point. It's become a huge industry and it is an economy. And I don't know exactly how it came to be. I will say I think we'd always had correlations to counterculture and art and like music. And I can't say the same maybe about, I guess other drugs may be the same, but not the same.
I think there's a whole scene around Coke.
But here's the thing. Coke is like what pop stars do.
Yeah.
And it's
or people who want to feel a decade younger than they are.
And it's like, California girls. That's Coke. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But weed is Bob Marley. You know?
Yeah. It's like... it's a drug of relaxation. It's not something that's like, I'm feeling alive in a crazy way. It's like often like you chill out with it. And I think a lot of different groups of people can handle chilling out. I mean, you're right that it starts in counterculture and it starts in many different like subsects, not in mainstream necessarily, but I think everybody kind of comes around to it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's like, I mean, they're just a little high. It's fine.
Like I can't, like if I bumped into this girl I knew, she was acting absolutely insane at a bar. Like I was like, is she unwell? And it's like, oh no, she's just on cocaine. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Like this woman is insane. And then, you know, I got home and my roommate had a couple friends over and they were just sitting on the couch watching a music video. And it took me an hour to realize they were high. And I'm like, okay, so that's, yeah.
Was that, but how much of that was like, they are not like, it wasn't being expressed in such a way versus your gullibility? At the time.
I think it was both. I was incredibly gullible.
Yeah.
I thought I was the funniest person on earth, and then it was like, oh no, they were actually.
You let it stroke the ego right away.
I was like, I'm literally the funniest person in the world. But I would love to know when's the first time you did weed.
Oh,
I also say do weed and did weed, and I refuse to say it any other way.
When did you do the doob?
Yeah.
It might surprise you. It was much later in my life than you. I didn't smoke weed till. Well, go for it.
23.
No, later. I did not smoke weed until I was 30.
Okay, you're crazy. You're the craziest man I've ever met. You're crazy, girl.
I didn't smoke weed until I was 30.
What?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give the reasoning that is not too invasive. As a teen, I had a mental health diagnosis that had me on medicine that was like, don't drink, don't do these things. Basically, and you know, a lot of this was growing up in a more conservative sort of area anyway, that like would really hammer home these like, you cannot do this stuff. And so it just means that like I actually didn't drink a whole lot. I drank in college, but like I didn't drink to excess all that often. And with weed, I was of two minds. One, which was like, I don't necessarily feel the compulsion and worrying about these things that like doctors are warning me that I need to be careful of. But then the second thing was also I had a real chip on my shoulder about being a creative human being that makes art that didn't need weed to like facilitate it.
Oh, okay. So you just like made it this whole narrative in your head about
a bit.
Okay. That no one else cared about.
That no one else cared about. Arguably, I didn't even like care about. Like it doesn't matter. Like, whatever process works for you is fine. For some reason, I just like had this very straight arrow approach about it. And then I got to be like close to 30, and I was just like, well, also who cares? Like I'm, you know, I don't know. As I've gotten older, I have gotten better about not trying to view the optics of what I look like to other people and care only like what I want.
Yeah.
So I smoked weed, and then smoked a lot of weed, but not. But not like it has never been for me something that I do because I need to feel like creatively in sync. Like it has often, honest to God, been I smoke so I can like go to sleep.
Yeah, no,
like,
I get
it.
it.
Really helps my sleep.
Yeah.
I love watching bad movies high.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Edibles and bad movies are the best Kris night experience you will get as a friend of mine.
It's
and you know this personally.
Oh my God, I've been invited to many screenings that involved edibles and watching Tammy and the T-Rex, for example.
A fantastic feature film.
Truly, it was one of the best things I'd ever watched. It was so bad.
Tammy and the T-Rex. Now I have to pitch that to everybody because they
pitch it.
Tammy and the T-Rex stars a high school Denise Richards and a high school Paul Walker. High school Paul Walker is in love with high school Denise Richards, but she has a boyfriend who's in a gang. That gang member finds out high school Paul Walker likes her, takes him to an animal sanctuary, and kills him in a lion's den.
I forgot about this. I was high.
A mad scientist finds high school Paul Walker's body, takes his brain, and puts it into an animatronic dinosaur. That animatronic dinosaur is now high school Paul Walker, who still has the hots for high school Denise Richards and is just trying to find her.
The dinosaur wants to fuck high school Denise
The dinosaur
Richards.
is down to fuck. He's alive and well. Also, I say animatronic dinosaur, but really it's like a still dinosaur on like a dolly. And
Well,
like
yeah, I remember there were several shots where you would see a human arm.
Yeah.
but then a tiny T-Rex hand at the end. I'm like,
there's a shot where the dinosaur needs to trying to call Denise Richards. And so it's just like a PA with a green sock on their arm going to the payphone, hitting the register to see if it can get change out, and then dialing the numbers.
at least that, I remember that one, but at least that one, like, they tried. I remember seeing a hairy male arm.
Yeah. There are some times where it's like they clearly didn't proof the shot. They
did not proof the
shot. They were
shot.
just letting it happen. Those are the sorts of things I actually, as my like media appetite, consume a lot of, and that is heavily facilitated by an enjoyment of edibles.
I think the best film I ever watched while on edibles was right before the pandemic. My cousin and I bought these edibles that now in retrospect were the strongest things I'd ever consumed in my life. Like the fact, I don't know how they put that much THC into, I had a fourth of whatever was given to me. We watched Cats.
The modern remake?
The modern remake
Yeah.
of Cats. My husband, my cousin, and I. And my husband Daniel, he literally he created a philosophy that I had read in a postmodern philosophy class in college, which is called Simulacra and Simulation by Baudrillard.
Okay.
He came up with it. He came up, he was like, the rules of the world aren't being followed. Therefore, everything, it feels off. It's the simulacra. And I'm like, yeah, you're referencing Baudrillard's. And he was like, I don't know what Baudrillard is. I am coming up with this myself. And he thought he was a genius. And then he Googled it and it was like, oh my God. He just thought the same as like a very famous postmodern philosopher. But anyway,
I'm impressed that he pulled from all of that just because he saw James Corden's cat butthole.
And wearing boots. And the other ones have paws. It's like find what the rules are.
I need to know the anthropological rule set that we are following about what is cat and what is human in these cats.
Absolutely. They didn't follow any rules. Therefore, it doesn't feel like a real world. So that's why it was so bad, because there were no, you couldn't tether yourself.
And that alone is why it was bad.
That's the only reason. I love Taylor Swift in it. Not Jason Derulo singing about milk. The first time I did weed, I think I was like 18.
Okay.
And I was in Venezuela. So it was like scary. It was like I would watch movies and TV of like US high school students like smoking weed, but I never saw it. It was like just like less prevalent.
Interesting. So like you had an awareness that they existed, or were you even blindsided when you found out that like
no, I knew
somewhere
they
in your peripheral had
existed,
it?
but then like I was sort of dating this like guy from another school, and he was like, oh, have you ever tried this? And I was like, oh my God, weed, I'm scared. And so we tried it, and I couldn't stop laughing, and no one else was laughing. Like, I just remember being the only person laughing, and then eating an entire tub of ice cream my mom made. My mom used to make mango ice cream. And then being afraid of it, because I was like, oh, I was so embarrassing. I'm like so embarrassed by myself. Like, I laughed. I was like so wacky. I couldn't control myself. And my relationship with weed has evolved as I've evolved my relationship with myself, which is like, oh, I'm fine. Like, you know, the fact that I laugh at wacky stuff doesn't mean I'm weird or unlikable. I've never been like a heavy weed user, but when I do it, I really enjoy it. And I usually do it with people that I love and that I feel very comfortable around.
Totally.
And me and you have done it as like, it's just we respect it so that it is the protagonist of the evening. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you and I are both people that like to ritualize things when it feels like more fun to do so. So it's less about like, oh, it's like such a novel thing that we have to be novel with it. But instead it's like, oh no, this is the weekend we're just gonna be stoned the entire time and just go do bumper cars at Coney Island.
And it isn't like, oh, I want to just do edibles anytime I feel anxious, or I'm going to do edibles every day. It's like, oh my God, once a year we go to Coney Island and we do this thing. It's like there's like as you said, there's this ritual to it. But like, I have been reading up a little bit on weed is, although it's been around for so long, research around it is quite new.
Right, because it wasn't legal to be researching with it, so we didn't have the means to do it.
Precisely. So there are a lot of negative effects I think we don't know about, particularly when weed is used very early in life, is what I've just read up on. And then for some people, it has incredibly negative effects. And some people
there's
it
like
doesn't.
folks that have like psychosis sort of feeling effects to it sometimes. That is not the typical, but can happen.
It has made me wonder, and I like think about this all the time, which is
Really?
weird. I think about like drug legalization.
Yeah, sure.
Because I teeter. Because I'm like, look at how legalizing weed and having, strict rules on it, which no New York City deli follows, but whatever.
Yeah. Oh, we'll get to the Manhattan musk that has been
I can't wait
weed
to
smell.
get to that. Absolutely crazy. But like legalizing it has made it so that it is ultimately safer.
Yeah.
And it's, what you're getting generally, although there's some studies that show that it's actually not possible to fully understand what you're getting every time you buy something, and the strain and the brand and the whatever.
And also, now that it's become more commercialized, becomes this like slight arms race to higher and higher dosages.
Yes.
Which means that the dosage that you have access to may actually by default already be much more than what you actually want to have. And that has become an issue of like, how do I find just like chill weed?
The first time I smoked weed, it was like half a cigarette and then 4 strands of whatever the hell a high school student had in his backpack. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. It probably had nothing.
Yeah, it probably had nothing at all. Well, so that made me think, as you were telling your high school story, it did remind me that I had one attempt at smoking weed in middle school.
You shut up, middle school? That's so little.
I was maybe 13 or so. I mean, please keep in mind, I am old enough that this was pre-internet.
Holy shit.
There was not a Google to confirm this worked or not.
And then you couldn't go to the woods and find a Playboy and search the Playboy for instructions.
We found the porn in the woods. Don't worry. No, we had heard a rumor that if you smoked oregano, you could get high.
That's why all the Italian grandmas eat so much, because they're just like surrounded by oregano.
We had heard that if you do, so like I had a buddy who got his older brother to get him like papers from like a cigarette, spot. And we just like went into mom's pantry and poured out oregano. But then also because we're, I don't know, just trying to like egg each other on, it was that thing where we all started pretending we were high, not admitting to anybody that we were pretending. And so
This is
then it
the
was all
most
like,
cringy scene in the world. I'm like
we were
dying.
13 without internet. Yeah.
Anyway. You know what?
I felt properly seasoned.
When you die, I hope I get to write your obituary, or like maybe I hope Rosie's like, yeah, whatever.
Whatever, Tia Joa, just go up there and do it.
Just like do it. I don't care.
It's like a singer is done singing like a nice song that's like somber but appropriate for the moment. And then you're like, this motherfucker smoked oregano when he was 13.
Like, what type of idiot does that? And then you're just like in the casket. And then I sprinkle oregano on your casket. I love that.
And then just subtly mutter, that's amore.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I mean, listen, I would argue that there is a beauty to the life pre-internet where these sorts of rumors could like really have a foothold enough to where you and a group of friends are all like, well, we should at least try it, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's all too easy to just get verification if it works or not. Or it's all too easy to have mysteries that used to be conversation points and arguments in bars can just be solved in a Google now. That kind of takes a little bit of fun magic away. But
I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, you haven't known any different.
I also have a terrible memory. I think about this all the time. If I didn't have a phone, I'd be dead. Like,
yeah,
I don't remember anything. I don't remember emergency situation. I don't know anyone's number. How to jumpstart a car, I gotta Google it. Like, I'm useless. I'm a useless pod.
Well, I tell you what won't help your memory retention is smoking a lot of weed, which is, I think, where I found myself.
Oh, yeah. Well, I will say that I have a couple of loved ones who I do think that the usage has been so big that I do think it's affected them. Like,
Sure.
I really do. But I think that's the case with anything. Like, if you eat red meat 3 times a day, baby, I don't know how your cholesterol gonna be looking. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think anything done in excess has a means of like pivoting how you were experienced, right? I watch a lot of pro wrestling. I gotta watch other things if I'm gonna talk to anybody about anything. Like, if you just experienced me as constantly talking about this thing you didn't want to hear about, you would be sick of me. You would find me to be like narrow-casted. Anything in excess alters how you can like be perceived. It's helpful to have a more well-rounded relationship with the things you enjoy in your life.
Okay, but now I want to go back to drug legalization because I
Sure.
do.
I deviated you 3 times around.
Yeah, you really did. You deviated so hard. I'm a septum that a Beverly Hills girl is using as an excuse for a nose job. Oh,
wow. That was like the most Rodney Dangerfield modernization delivery you could have. That's Dice Clay, not Rodney Dangerfield.
I thought it.
Rodney Dangerfield is, I get no respect, I tell you.
Oh, I thought it was Andrew Dice Clay that you were. Anyway.
No.
So, I went to Amsterdam when I was 12 and then recently. Now, when I was 12, I was like traumatized. And I was like, what is all this drug? Why are people urinating on the street and all this shit? And then I went back recently and I'm like, this place is lovely. Because in comparison to like LA and New York, it's like, it's just a city. But it was the first place where I saw that weed was legalized.
Yeah.
And there were strict regulations of where and how. And I remember my mom having a conversation with my dad about how she was like, I think this is what needs to happen for like every drug, just because there's so many negative externalities of not having this legalized. The same thing as prostitution. And then in that moment, we turned the street.
And it hit red light.
And we were in the red light district. And I was like, what? And my mom's like, ay, coño, ay. Joanna, wait, let me explain this to you. This is terrible. This is awful. And I'm like, well, I mean...
Can't be that bad, Mom. You were just vouching for it.
And then we had a whole conversation about that. And, the legalization of things, I think legalization of prostitution, legalization of drugs. It's like, well, would it make it more safe? The access to it would be a lot easier. Is that something we want? You know? Is that something that is positive for society? But then simultaneously, it is safer. It'll be safer for people to consume or safer for people to be sex workers. Like, I don't know where I stand,
Yeah, I mean, I think both the access becomes safer for people who choose to do it, becomes safer because things become regulated, and so that we know the thing that you are getting is not laced or all these sorts of things. There's also the legal side of it in terms of like who was being incarcerated for so long, breaking the laws of distributing these sorts of things, who are no longer, or are being expunged or released, and all for things that we collectively and culturally are just doing in the background. If we put it into the foreground, it means that other people's lives are not going to be interrupted, harmed, impacted negatively. So, like, I think there are benefits for sure. And also, nothing can just be done by saying, oh, great, stop that now. Like, everything that you do when you evolve has to be like thoughtfully considered and a little bit of trial and error, right? Like, you got to just like open the floodgate a little and then find out where the leaks are for the flow.
I mean, Oxy was a legal prescription drug.
Still is.
Oh, it is, right. It's just, it's so scary to me that I'm like, I'm sure it's gone.
No. It's definitely not gone. It is still around. If you talk about a drug I get scared of, I get scared of those sorts of like narcotics where it's like a doctor is telling me to do it. I'm in a situation where I have to, like, to part a little bit, my father is like, coming out of the tail end of a cancer diagnosis and cancer treatment. And the doctor's telling him to take Oxycontin all the time to feel better. And he himself was just like, I don't want to get stuck on these.
No.
So
it's
like,
scary.
He's trepidatious. Even as he continues taking them, feels the benefits. He's like consciously aware of it. My argument is, all right, if you're aware of it, it ain't got you.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? So it's like, trust in that a little bit. But yeah, those are scary, and those are encouraged upon us by people that we hire to entrust with our health and care.
I was actually prescribed Oxy when I had my arm surgery and my elbow reconstruction. And I remember not liking how I was feeling after. Like, I didn't realize it was the Oxy, but I was sleeping through the day. I was just feeling like I was in a haze. I just didn't feel good. This was like a couple weeks after. So I stopped cold turkey. This is before all of this research came out about Oxy. Like we just thought it was like a Tylenol.
Yeah.
And I got into a depression. We couldn't figure out what the cause of the depression was. Was it the accident? Was it this? Was it that? I had also gone through a breakup at the time.
The fella didn't want your bionic elbow anymore?
The fella, I think, maybe wanted to break up before my accident. And
and then he's sitting in that hospital room and fuck.
He was such a nice guy that he was like, I can't break up with her now. And then it was like, once I got the cast off and started having some movement, he was like, all right, I gotta go.
I gotta get out. I hope you're well.
So he was actually quite nice. Thanks for staying with me those months.
That's very good.
I think the depression was linked to the just stopping the Oxy without weaning off of it. It was just like, I'm off of this thing that I didn't realize the effects of it were. Since then, I've been prescribed and I've never taken it again. I just avoid it.
I think I know a fair amount of people that do that. They're like, if I don't need it, even though they gave it to me, I'm just gonna leave it be.
Yeah, and if you're in an incredible amount of pain, like I mean,
then use
cost benefit. If you need to take it, you need to take it.
Take it. Watch a bad movie. See if it's the same.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Kris hosted a great party where he just gave us all a bunch of Oxy and we watched a Kung Fu movie from 87. Shit was a little weird. Not that fun. I fell asleep. My body felt like a stiff golem sitting on a couch.
I don't even know what people on Oxy do. What do you do on Oxy?
I'm going to speak out of my ass because I don't actually know like the feelings that you get in the early onset, but like, the addictive quality of it is that once you're sort of hooked, you only feel normal with it. And then in withdrawing, that's when you feel all the negative. So then it's doing nothing for you other than bringing you back to a function.
No, I know that, but then why are high school kids doing it for fun?
I don't know, because every high school kid is like, a thing I can do behind someone's back. That
like fucking smoking oregano.
Middle school, give me some credit.
Whatever, bro. That's so cringe.
I didn't have an AOL disc with 500 free hours yet to check and make sure.
Okay, fine.
Do you understand that reference?
No.
Really?
AOL disc?
Oh my God, Joanna! There was a time in our lives where internet. You could get free prepaid CD-ROMs with hours of access to the internet. AOL would give you like in a magazine. It's like, here's 700 free hours of the internet. Try us out. And you would install their software with the disc and it would give you like a time limit of how long it's like a prepaid phone card for the internet.
Oh, that's interesting. I remember when I first started using the internet, me and my friends would go on these chats.
Like chat room chats?
And we would pretend to be a hot 17-year-old blonde.
Yeah.
With
how old were you?
I don't know, 11, like 12, 11. I don't remember.
So the hot 17 was like, I'm going to be so grown.
But then it was
not
just
thinking about the predatory nature of that age yet.
No, but I think everyone in those chats was like 12. Like, like they'd be like, how big are your boobs? And then I remember being like, I don't know what size are boobs.
You just go ellipses big.
Big. I think I said like, a C+ cup. I think is what I said.
C+. That's slightly better than average.
And he's like, C+?
Teacher calls it passing.
And I wonder what it's like growing up now, like with weed more normalized and...
Well, this gets me to Manhattan Musk because you're right that now it's very normalized. We both live in places that are legalized. You really smell it everywhere.
Everywhere.
And I'm not saying that as to say like it's a bad smell, but it is a new normal that you have to like adjust to. And I think about it specifically about like my daughter being like, what's that smell?
Right.
So early. And then also how she won't notice it as abnormal. The same way that like I grew up around a lot of cigarette smoke and like you could still smoke in restaurants and things. And so like that smell just became normal. I'm fascinated by what that impact will be. And I'm assuming it's going to be as normalized as what drinking is, right? Where it's like, I go to family events. Most of the guys had beers. So like that, I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't thinking about how like inebriated they were getting.
Yeah, I was thinking about cigarettes and how that's a really good indicator or like an example of how society dictates whether something is socially acceptable or not.
Yeah.
Just in our lifetime, there was a time where cigarettes, like, people knew it was bad, but people did it. Like, I remember getting on a Iberia flight from Caracas to Madrid, and the woman in front of me smoked for the entire flight, which was like an 8-hour flight.
Right.
And it was just insane. It was just like, are you kidding me? What the fuck are we doing here? And now, I have a friend, Natalie, she's from Spain, and she lives in New York, and she really struggles socially because she's a heavy smoker. She smokes about a pack a day. And she's like, I'm not allowed to smoke anywhere, and I feel like people judge me for smoking. Meanwhile, people are like smoking weed
Everywhere.
everywhere. And it's interesting because I checked how I perceive both things, and I do feel more negatively about cigarettes.
Yeah, because, we grew up when there was like an active social movement towards stigmatizing something that had become so normal. We all saw like PSAs about rotted lungs and stuff while we're trying to watch cartoons, and saw like all these sorts of things pop up that, trickle into your brain and tell you what is going to be right or wrong. I have a theory that like my kids' generation of that, it's not going to be cigarettes. It's going to be like eating meat.
Oh, I have a theory too. I think you stole that theory from me.
I think I said the theory to you at some point.
No, my dad told me that theory.
Well, you know what? I have an uncle at Nintendo that told me that.
Oh, really?
No. So occasionally, you and I have had enough conversations where we just steal each other's material. That's fair. That's fine.
My dad told me that. He was like, I wouldn't be surprised if your kids are like, Mom, you're disgusting. I can't believe you're eating an animal. And you're going to be like, bitch, shut the fuck up.
Just fucking gnawing on a rib. Be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Like, because it's like, we tend to judge previous generations so heavily and say, like,
Yeah.
I would never. And it's like, yeah, you would. Yeah, you would. You would. Society is too strong.
Yeah, you will fall victim to the zeitgeist.
I would have smoked my ass off.
Yeah, again, I watch a lot of bad movies, so I watch a lot of old, antiquated stuff. There's nothing that looks cooler than smoking cigarettes.
It's so hot.
It's like lensed to look incredibly cool.
You know what's not cool? Being hunched over an edible, trying to cut it 4 ways evenly, and then putting it in your mouth. Like, what is that?
Sorry, there's no sex appeal to watching me use a plastic fork to cut this like Fruity Pebbles edible. You have to make sure. Okay. So you just take a little bit of this. You'll have a good night. It's
I have a theory that maybe high school students now are like, maybe weed isn't that cool because like my mom does it and it's like, it's a gummy.
Well, do you know one thing that the youth do not enjoy anymore is sex in media? That like
I read that.
So growing up now, having access to internet, meaning having access to pornographic material and things like that, there is a more like conservative movement being upset that sex scenes are an art,
right?
And stuff, which like is directly kind of to this point we talked about with weed, a reaction to having so much of it in front of them now, that feeling like this is for other people, this isn't for us, we're going to retreat.
And I also read that this generation is really into relationships on screen being more about friendship and not about romance and sex, which I find so interesting. I think that that's definitely like, can you imagine growing up and having and just being able to go on your laptop and see any depraved thing you want?
I mean, it's wild to think about that. Also, like the ways in which relationships now are impacted by like how you operate on a social media platform at like a very early age, that like you have constant access to like your social responsibilities.
Yeah, you can't escape.
I had a neighbor who, the neighbor boy was like 13 years old. He had just been using Snapchat for the first 6 months that he was allowed to have it. And he was explaining to me what, like, his friends, if they send him a picture of the ceiling, it means, I'm bored, you need to talk to me. It was like, oh, and if you don't respond to that at a certain point, you get this, which is like a warning shot in a lot of ways.
So they've created their own language.
Yeah, absolutely, which we all did.
Yeah, TTYL.
But like, I could always just like go home and ignore everybody when I was done with it for the day, you know? And
Right.
that doesn't happen anymore.
Wow.
Wow. None of this is weed.
Weed. I think we should do our annual weed day.
It has been a long time since you and I have had a big fun weed day.
I think it's been years.
It's been years. Not to be confused with the big fun mushrooms day.
Oh my goodness.
Also very, very fun times.
Well, I've only done that once in my life. It was like, I think, one of the most meaningful experiences of my life, which is so weird to say.
Yeah, especially when I have the context of knowing at one point you made a collage and said, I solved ADHD. So I don't know how profound it could actually be.
Well, there's a lot of studies now where they're connecting the effects of whatever chemicals in mushrooms to like treating depression and PTSD. And, you know, that research is only able to happen now because there's more of a normalization of mushrooms and like microdosing as sort of a medicine for anxiety and all this other stuff.
Or just a product on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, it's on Instagram.
I feel like that is the wildest thing to come in the wake of weed becoming more normalized. That it has, ironically enough, for all the claims of how it was going to be a gateway drug, has been a gateway to the commercialization of access to drugs. Now I get Instagram ads about like ketamine therapy treatments.
That's crazy.
Mushroom chocolate bars and, you know, edibles mailed to your door and stuff. And that is a wild contrast from call someone's beeper, wait at a payphone, they'll come drop it off something, be
It's
lucky
like
what you got.
Katy Perry's soda company and then a mushroom company. And then it's like, wow, we've like, it is a form of like legalizing without it being legal.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of loopholing happening for a lot of those things. To your point, like that sort of research gets to happen now. And also people can just try it for themselves and find out in more like honest ways. Like I appreciate the ways in which you can be more intentional about what you're doing now instead of having to be so sketchy.
Yeah.
And then like only having access to it if you live a certain lifestyle. Yeah.
You know,
Call me old fashioned. I like having my drugs on Instagram.
there is a interesting anti-alcohol movement also in this new generation.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's interesting. Like, I think
As a lady who likes her wine.
I love wine. But, you know, there's research coming out about the cancers linked to alcohol, and I'm concerned about that.
Sure.
So
Have you never felt older than your life than saying, I feel concerned about wine cancer?
I really do. I'm like, what do I need to do in my life to lead a more healthy life so that this doesn't happen to me? I mean, I think it's stupid, but but like, you know, I think that you have to make sacrifices in your life to lead a healthy one. I was talking to my friend before logging on where I'm like, maybe I do like dry months regularly. And
Yeah,
so,
sure.
you know, stuff like that.
There's certainly something about like, you know, like a dry January or whatever saying, yeah, sure. If nothing else, this reminds myself that everything is in my own control.
Oh,
And
I love that.
It's like all it has to be is this like reminder to you that like in its absence, I can remember what it's for.
Yeah, instead of just like compulsively just like grabbing a beer, it's like
Totally.
oh, I don't know if I need it. You know,
Even circling back to weed, I have curbed off how much I smoke because I realized at a certain point that it was becoming my default activity once like kid was asleep, I had the night to myself sort of thing, that it was becoming compulsive rather than intentional. And
Right.
at a certain point I was like, oh, I'm just bored in the suburbs.
bored in the suburbs.
I'm just bored and filling time. And then that is not comfortable to me about what relationship I want to have with this.
Okay, well, I love this for you. This has been an amazing therapy session, Kris.
This has been a little more therapeutic. You know what it is that we started with talking about wildfires. Then we talked about real blazing. And I never at a certain point felt like I could
pivot.
Fuck around too hard today.
Yeah, we honestly fucked this. It was all our fault. We should have just ignored what's happening in the world.
We should ignore everything happening in the world. We should just be living in our own bubble. That's it. I didn't think of an outro. Get me the fuck out of this.
I'm so hungry. I think talking
all
about
this talk about weed is giving you the munchies.
That's all I can think about right now.